Today we have a very special guest, Andrea from AgileSherpas. Andrea, how are you?
I am delighted to be here.
That's amazing. I'm so happy to have you. For a little bit of background, Andrea is a co-founder of AgileSherpas, a professional agile marketing nerd. Andrea spends her days helping fellow marketers do the right work at the right time by adapting agile practices from software to the marketing world. Today we're going to learn how Agile can help us marketers do more with less without going crazy. Andrea, the floor is yours.
It froze.
Uh-oh. So you missed me at some point in the time. Or is Andrea frozen?
I think Andrea's frozen.
Oh no.
She'll be right back.
This hasn't happened before. Awesome. So Ross, what other marketing tools and tips and tricks have you learned in the last couple of days?
In the last couple of days, I'm just going to talk about Andrea's stuff. So
Okay.
Andrea's going to show us Trello, which is, I think, super useful. We've switched to Clubhouse, which is a different type of Agile, which is a little more complicated. And there's just some sort of awesomeness in the simplicity of tools. Trello is so simple, you can't do a lot with it, but it's really easy to use. Clubhouse is a little more complex, and because of that, there's just a lot more places to get confused. And so, I don't know, that's one of the questions I have for her is just, at what point does more help you accomplish more? And at what point is simple the best process? And then just, instead of focusing on process and putting stuff into cards, focus on communicating and executing.
I think it's
There we go.
Yes, she's back.
And we're back.
To talk on that, Ross was kind of preparing his questions of what he had on tools like Clubhouse versus Trello in terms of marketing things. What I think is interesting is I had a conversation this weekend about a particular podcast I was watching where this co-founder or this founder of this company was talking about the best solutions are obvious, right? So I think what you're saying, Ross, is that even though Clubhouse it can be good, once you kind of get your complicated workflows, if you have a lot of operations going on, sometimes the obvious solutions are the best solutions. And I think that's kind of what you're pitching with the Trello versus Clubhouse. But Andrea?
We'll jump right back into this presentation and I will ask that question
Sorry about
after.
that, guys. Yeah, I'm tethered to my hotspot now, so whatever weird Wi-Fi thing is happening in my house should not affect us anymore. Cool. So let me share my screen really quickly because I think this will help kind of ground us in what I want to share with everybody today. What you're looking at is the Trello board, speaking of Trello, that we use at AgileSherpas. And this embodies kind of all the basic, simple ideas that I wanted to talk to you guys about today, because what Ross and I were kind of kicking around when we were discussing what might be useful to share was how we were able to use Agile at AgileSherpas to respond to the COVID stuff when it started to really come down a couple of months ago. And that, in my mind, was just like a concentrated version of what marketing is like all the time, because there's always something crazy going on and there's always a new, this is on fire and you need to deal with it right now, or sales needs this thing right now, drop everything and deal with it. That's kind of always happening, and COVID was just that on steroids in a lot of ways. And so what we need to do as marketers is to be prepared for all of that, because unpredictability and volatility is just the way of the world, even more so now than before. And so the simple things that we're doing and that we coach people to do in their own work is first and foremost to visualize, right? So the column that you see, the upcoming 3 to 6 weeks column there, that's kind of like stuff we think is going to happen, right, within the next 3 to 6 weeks. And that is always in flux. Things are coming in and going out and getting rearranged. And then the 2-week backlog is what we have decided to do. We just did backlog refinement this morning. So this is showing you like what we have all agreed to do within the next 2 weeks on our team. And the cool thing that we were able to do when the COVID stuff started happening is the board already existed like this. And so we had visibility into everything we really wanted to do within the next 2 weeks, as well as what we thought was going to happen within the next 3 to 6 weeks. COVID stuff goes down. Prior to the pandemic, we did almost all of our training face-to-face. We got on planes, we went to clients. Obviously, poof, that was not a thing anymore. And so what we were able to do is look at the work we had started and say, what of this is no longer relevant and does not deserve our time anymore, and delete it off the board and decide not to do it. Other things needed to be readjusted, and there was actually quite a lot of new work that got brought into the board. And you can see this light blue tag right here. We're drafting now our official kind of travel policy going forward with the pandemic. And that's the only light blue card left. But right after the pandemic, tons of cards had this light blue tag to show that this was work we were doing in response to the pandemic situation. But then we also have our OKR cards here on the far left, and these are our quarterly big goals. And so we were able to see through the board how much of our work is still being tied to these OKRs and how much got just trashed because of the changing conditions. And so we were able to see pretty quickly, like, a lot of the deals that were still in flight were probably still going to land, right? And so our revenue OKR didn't get horribly destroyed, but in Q1, we had an OKR to hire and onboard a new coach. That is not something we wanted to continue doing as we were being disrupted in all of this. And so all those cards were deprioritized and thrown to the bottom of the list. So the visibility was key to have all the work out there to be able to make those kinds of quick trade-offs. And then we could be confident in where we're putting our efforts, because we deliberately chose what to do and what not to do. And then the other crucial part of it is then to focus on just a few things. So our backlog is quite large. This is a screenshot, so I can't scroll for you, but you can see there's about twice as many cards in the backlog as you can see right here. But our in progress is much smaller. So we try to keep this list really small so that each of us on the team is only doing a couple things at a time. And you only bring in new work when you finish something that's in progress. Because if we just try to do everything at once, the time it takes them all balloons, right? And so we try to focus on just a couple of cards at any given time. And then when they're done, we can pull in new things. So this was amazing to have it around for dealing with the uncertainty that came with the pandemic. It also allowed us to really circle the wagons and focus in our efforts. And within about 2 weeks of the lockdown really starting here in the States, at least, we were able to launch, let me switch my screen share here. We were able to launch a totally new course that we put together, recorded, started a marketing campaign around. So we called it the Agile Marketing Accelerator. And you can see multiple modules here that me and the other coaches, we designed, we put them together, we sat down and recorded them, right, with our little screen share tools. And we started, right, offering it up and had a marketing campaign around it. And we got that out in like 2 weeks. So we were able to really pivot and start delivering value in a different way because we had the Agile system that was allowing us to see what we were supposed to be doing and focus effort on a few high value tasks at a time. So it's really those two kind of things in balance that are, in my mind, at the heart of really what Agile is. It's not just about going fast, and it's not about the crazy constant pivot. It's focus your effort on the right work at the right time. So there's my little, just under 10 minutes, I think, overview of kind of how this stuff works. And then, of course, I'm sure there's tons of questions from people about how this actually happens.
Absolutely. So Agile has been in software development for a while now. What was the counterpart as opposed to Agile in marketing? What was that called? And kind of when did you start to move towards an Agile marketing framework?
Yeah, so Agile software development is 2-ish decades old now,
Yeah.
about 20 years. Agile marketing, however, is much younger. What we have learned over the past 7 or 8 years, I think it is, since the Agile Marketing Manifesto was written, is that take things from software development and copy paste, right? A lot of software developers, for instance, use Scrum, where they're going to lock themselves into a specific amount of work for a 2-ish week sprint. A lot of marketing teams can't do that, right? I can't tell you exactly what we're going to be doing in 2 weeks because of uncertainty and because of sales and clients, and all of these things are going to happen. And so the system I was showing you there is more like a Kanban style system where we're able to do more dynamic reprioritization in response to client requests, new sales, whatever it is that we need to do. And so that's a lot of the distinction, is we can't get caught up in like by the book Scrum. It's more about agility than it is about a particular specific framework.
So on that methodology, what kind of prioritization framework do you use? Like when you're kind of deciding through it, like how big is your team? Is there a group of people making a decision on the priorities of particular topics or marketing topics? Do you use any frameworks like ICE or anything like that?
Yeah, that's a good question. So we prioritize first based on our OKRs, right? So we have 3 to 5 OKRs per quarter, and those are prioritized. And so those are our primary filter for prioritization. Myself and our 2 other partners work together to make sure that the backlog is in the right order, right? Top priority at the top and so forth. That's our main filter. And then occasionally there will be kind of an urgent card that gets dropped in that needs to be tackled right away that will kind of jump the queue. But the OKR is the filter for us. We've also worked with clients to do prioritization on cost of delay. So what's it costing us to not do this right now? And that's another cool kind of filter to look at.
That's interesting.
Interesting. My question around all of this is, for a lot of the companies that are listening to this, they're probably getting started and they are adding people to their team. How do you estimate what someone can do or is capable of doing if they're just being onboarded or just joining your team? And how do you integrate them into the system so they also understand it and can be part of it?
Yeah, the nice thing about the Kanban style is you don't have to worry too much about people's capacity, because the backlog is there and we've guesstimated about how much we can do in 2 weeks. But if we're wrong, the work is still there and will just make its way up to the top and get done when it gets done. If there are things with deadlines, those are indicated on the cards and those would need to get done by their deadline. But we've also, you saw on the board when I was sharing, we've also started talking a bit about capacity because we have a lot of client work active right now. And so some people have client related work that's just teaching clients, coaching clients, and that's time they're not available to write emails, write content, do kind of marketing-y stuff. And so we have a card that says, you know, one person's 30% available for card work. And so if that person had 18 cards in the 2-week backlog, they're overcommitted. That's not going to happen. And so we use that to balance. And it's not about hours either, right? We don't say this card takes 2 hours or this card takes 5 hours. It's more about like, this is a big, scary, massive thing. There should only be one of these for me to work on in the next couple of weeks. So we don't get down into the like super tiny estimation arguments or anything there.
Did you always have digital training? Or is this something new, or is this a new product line for you in this
It's
time?
a good question. We were fortunate to have started our online school in Q3 last year. And so we had that capability already in place, and it was about adding a new course instead of setting up the entire LMS from scratch.
That's pretty, yeah. It was
I'm
nice that you had
the
that set up.
previous question.
Yeah.
So just answer to what you said previously. So it's not about managing people and doing, you know, as much as you can. It's really about just saying what the priorities are. I had a follow-up question, but I'll let Brian go because I completely forgot.
You got it. Okay, cool. So I love this question. We ask this to almost everybody. So is there a campaign that you remember in which you like really wanted to do well and completely failed, or you had like a lot of hopes and completely failed, or a campaign the opposite, something that you really didn't think that was going to have a lot of impact but had some tremendous impact?
Yeah. The latter one, actually. So also in our online school, we had a class that we call Introduction to Agile Marketing, and it's been $79. It's, you know, a simple 80-minute thing. when the pandemic hit, we decided to open it up for free and to just, say everyone needs agility right now. Let's try to do our little tiny part that we can. And I thought people would, we get a dozen signups here and there, not a big deal. We've had hundreds of people sign up for that class since it opened up. And it's been an amazing lead generation. Like, we can see clusters of people from a particular organization sign up. And then it's a super easy email to that team lead being like, hey, I saw you guys all signed up here. Do you want some private training? Do you want some coaching? And it's been like, why didn't we do this 100 years ago? And so I'm like, it's free forever. Let's just keep it open, because it helps people. They get to learn. It's easy to consume the online content, and we get lead generation. But I had not expected the response that we saw to opening that up.
How big was your email list in preparation for that?
Email list when that thing opened up was about 3,500.
That's amazing. And so it's an entire video course. Did you have like a video trailer as well to like?
Yeah. So we have a little video trailer, and then the whole thing is pre-recorded with, handouts that you can download and things like that.
And then did you use an existing video platform to kind of like host and do the whole LMS type of thing?
Yeah. So the videos are all just private on Vimeo. So you can't see them without the direct link, and then they are hosted in the LMS.
That's cool. It reminds me of this tool called Gumroad that a lot of these like white paper marketers were using, where they would do an email capture and make the price of the product free, but you would have to get the email. So I think it's like really interesting. We're like kind of moving from this like white paper type of like era where here's this giant case study to here's this like video content, like exclusive video content
you're right. It's like a gated resource almost. Yeah.
It's really cool.
I'm going to switch the topic completely. So at the end of your last sentence or last question you were answering, you said that you should only put one card, even if it's a big chunk. And my question with all of this is always, how many times do you make a smaller card so that you can feel like you're accomplishing something and people see progress, versus a large card that has all of the details that you need for something? And on a spectrum, where is the appropriate time to split something into two projects?
Yeah, that's a good question. A lot of teams do that. They fall into the let's make a bunch of little tiny cards that's like, send one email, right? Done. Yay for us. But it's to me about the point of the board, right? Is not to look super productive or to prove to your boss that you're doing all kinds of things. It's really about figuring out how are we spending our time, and are we spending our time in the right way? And so actually, whenever we do refinement, I go through the board and review what got done in the previous 2 weeks and tally it up. And like today, when we were doing our refinement, we had almost all business as usual and client delivery work in the last 2 weeks, because that's where we are. But as a business owner, I like that, but I also don't like that, because we didn't do a lot of sales and marketing type work to continue to build the pipeline. And so now I can say, hey guys, make sure that work is still happening, right? And so it becomes less about right sizing, but more about right prioritizing. But I also like my team to focus on cards that only hang out in progress for a couple of days tops, because the longer it's there, right, the more is wrapped up in that card and the more risk we're introducing into the system if it's there too long. So my guideline for my folks and people that I coach is a couple of days is the absolute biggest that a card should be. If it's bigger than that, you really have lots of cards hiding in that.
Can you talk about the risk that you're introducing? What is that risk? That you pivot and you don't need the card before it's completed and it's wasted energy?
It can be wasted energy for sure. Like, that's not a priority anymore. And it's also about, to me, continually delivering value too. Like, it should be value to the business, value to our clients, value to our subscribers. And if we're working on something for too long, we haven't delivered value. We need to figure out what's the little piece in there that we could get out faster that would provide value.
Gotcha. So then instead of waiting till the end of the project to bill a client, you provide value, bill a little bit along the way, so that at the end they aren't like, whoa, like what a big bill. And you're like, yeah, but this is what we agreed to. You expect it. Kind of like that.
Kind of like that. Yeah. Yeah.
As far as, so it sounds like you're using your board so that leadership can figure out what needs to be done with the business, but there might not be as much detail in each of the cards. Do you complement your cards with any other, I don't know, list system or anything to figure out what exactly you need to do on a day-to-day basis, or the 20 things that are incorporated in a project?
We try to keep the board as much the source of truth as possible so people don't have to navigate a bunch of different tools. And so like when we have a big project, it'll get a card with like 4 or 5 checklists in there. But one of the things I like about Trello is you can just choose a checklist item and turn it into a card. So like we can document a big complicated piece of work and then just process the little pieces. And then as a leader, I can see the components of it and how they relate to the whole. But then the team members, we can also tag one another. Hey, at Monica, I need you to review this blog post before it goes up. And then she gets a notification and we can isolate, right? The fewer tools we have open, the better. So we try to kind of keep everything in there.
Gotcha. One of the questions that I like to ask everyone is, where do you go to, like, Agile is a very large thing. There's tons of books. What do you see as the best source of learning, starting, growing, so that someone can build their own practice?
Yeah, I think I'm a book person. I love books, and I have a giant, Audible list and a Kindle backlog of things to read. For people that are wanting to do this themselves, like maybe you can't go convince your team yet that this is a good idea, you can do this on your own. Like I have a personal Kanban board that I put all my stuff on. And there's a great book called Personal Kanban, Kanban, that's all about mapping out your own personal work. And that's a super way to start. And there are great blogs about that too. Like personal agility is quite an interesting trend that people can look into. I'm trying to think of another good starting point without recommending my own book.
You can recommend your own book.
So my first book is called Death of a Marketer, and it's very like the intro kind of level to all of this. I have another book coming out in July, which is much more tactical. But other good books are Twice the Work in Half the Time, which is going to be all about Scrum, and other good ones, Agile for Everybody. These are all really good like primers and intros. Agile for Everybody is nice because it's not as software centric. Scrum is going to be a lot about, right, the software use case.
Cool. So if people wanted to learn more about AgileSherpas, how can they reach you? Is there a piece of content that you recommend to like get people up to speed to learn about your company?
Sure. AgileSherpas.com is where we have all of our stuff. I'm a content marketer at heart, and so we have tons of free content out there. You can find it in our resources section. We have a getting started guide, which will show you how to build a board like I was showing on Trello. Like, what do you need? What are the components of it? Writing good cards and things like that is all in there. So I think that's a good place. The free intro course is also a good place to start, which is AgileSherpas.getlearnworlds.com.
Awesome. Andrea, this has been excellent. And I have to say, this is one of my favorite like topics about the process. And like, we get on to like kind of some of the psychology or like content tips, but I feel like if you're not enjoying the process, then you should be doing something different.
And if you get the process right, all the work that flows through it is better. So it's worth taking the time to get the process right.